Hey folks, welcome back to another comparison video with yours truly, Sam Healey, and today I'm going to be taking a look at these two games right here. They're actually the same game, just two different versions of it. This one came out originally from Asmodee Editions and did pretty well and is no longer available. So IDW got the rights for it and pre-printed this guy right here. It is the same game. Absolutely no differences except for a few little minor details on the board, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I really enjoy playing this game. My wife really enjoys playing it as well. Probably a little long on the 5-player end of it, but sweet spot is definitely 4 and functions as 3. So that is the general introduction for Fire and Axe. Let's get into each edition and go from there. Now, the first glaring difference between the old version and the new version of Fire and Axe is the difference in the boards. This is the newer version and this is the older version. And I just wanted to highlight this at the very beginning of the video because it is the one thing in this game that I am most displeased with the reprint version of it. I think they took a very nice looking, functional, thematic board and tried to do something different with it. As you can see here, Kiev, Lubeck, and Nezdovo here have a defined purple or pinkish color. Whereas here it's muted, to say the least. Here you have a very stark green for these cities up here, whereas here it is once again muted. Now, another design choice that they decided to do here to try to help people differentiate between one group of ports and another. As you can see, these 3 groups are together, and these 3 groups are together, these 3 groups are together, and the ring around them has a different design than the others. So again, you can see that, but at the same time, that design is not all that different from the other ones. It is still a shiny metallic, almost a bronze color. The only difference is the actual design that is etched into that bronze. But you can see from looking at the board, there's no question as to what group of cities goes to which. All of these are clearly one group, whereas these are clearly one group, clearly one group, clearly independent, clearly independent, clearly independent, one group, one group. It's very, very easy to determine what is what on this board. Not difficult at all. Going from one C to the next C, there's a very stark difference. Going from west to north, stark difference. Going from west to east, again, stark difference. The only really close one is going from east to south down here. So again, they had already a functional, thematic looking board. All of the homelands were clearly defined. The wintering box was up here in the north, which again makes sense. But then they had to change it to something like this, where the wintering zone is actually closer to the south, where it used to be up here, where it made sense. The homeland they're still readily available, and that's fine. But here you have kind of a difference. This is almost a color blindness nightmare because all of the colors are muted. I mean, telling the difference, I would imagine, telling the difference between that and that it would be horribly difficult. The difference in color is just not good enough. Going from south to west, there is a slight, subtle difference there, but not one that would definitely tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt that you're moving from one kind of sea to the next. Now, one of the things that I do like about the board, the new one, aside from the wintering box being down here in the middle of nowhere, is the layout. I do like that it is a smaller board, and they did not suffer, they did not sacrifice a lot of the fonts and that type of thing for having a smaller board. I like this side of the board. I like how there are 2 tracks for the days instead of having just 2 tokens on the same track. I like that. That was good. I do enjoy the new mechanism that they have here of keeping track of the clear weather days. This is better. These are better. I like the layout, but the color choices that they went with and how muted and how dark the board was, I think, a board game faux pas. This is from the original game, and this is from the reprint of the game. And with the reprint of the game, I think they took some pretty good choices here, because they actually have a multiple use for this player board, where it is actually also a player aid, not just a board to hold the pieces that you're going to be loading onto your boat. So it has all of this extra information on there that was not present on the original player board, that I thought was very thematic, very good. But each of the towns are different, slightly different. I'll give you that, but different still in a very good way. You have old version here and new version here. Looks a little bit more like a town rather than just a bunch of buildings together. So there is that. I thought it was a good design choice. Furthermore, we also have the old and new versions of the cities. We have old version here, new cities here, the larger towns. Again, a good design choice, I think. Well done. Continuing on with the minis aspect of the new version, I think that they did a very good job of updating, upgrading the different ships that were used. This is the old one, this is the new one. Again, just a lot more detail is added to it. And while there's a lot of good detail on the old one, the new one is definitely a mark up. In the new version, you have 3 different sculpts of models. You have an archer, axeman, and a spearman there in the new ones, whereas in the old version, you simply have just the one version of model. So there's only the one sculpt in the old version. You have 3 sculpts in the new version. There's no difference, but the coolness factor is there that you have 3 different models representing your warriors rather than just one. Here are the differences between the 2 different games as far as the point tokens are concerned that you'll be awarded throughout the course of the game. The 50 pointers are actually better. I like these better than these. These are the old version, this is all the new version. But at the same time, with the color palette that they used for these, they look, I guess you could say, a little bit more like metal coins, but they are cardboard, but at the same time, it's a little bit more difficult to read the number on them. They are all different sizes, so there is that. Shown here is the difference between the different goods markers that you can take and trade in the different ports around the board. And at first, I was really kind of leaning heavy in the older version rather than the newer version. But now that I've looked at them side by side and I've played with the newer version a few times, it's a little bit easier to notice if somebody has one of these on their board, on their longboat, than one of these. The next difference I wanted to showcase was the difference between the clear weathering days here and the clear weather days of the old version opposed to the new version. And here the new version has this little dial thing that you place on the actual spots where the actual red lines line up. And this is how it starts for the beginning of the game. As you can see, the difference in the numbers shown isn't different at all. So it gives the same delineations whenever you play a rune card in the old game. You would simply take this and flip it 1/4 degree, like so. Here, you do the same thing, but it's a little bit, because the circle is larger, it's a little bit more unwieldy, and you basically have to turn like this. Again, you'll see that the actual difference in number doesn't change. But this makes it a little bit more clear. You don't have to do, it is simple, I understand that, but you don't have to do the math. You don't have to go 4 minus 1, okay, that's a 3. You just look, there's a 3. So this here also is the difference in the Saga cards that you'll be using throughout the game. Here with the old version on the left on both sides, and then you have the new version on the right on either column. And this is one of the creative differences that I actually do enjoy with a new game. I thought that the first of all, the newer cards can be read much more easily. The font on these older cards is very small, while the artistic choice, I guess, maybe is a little bit different. I do like the overall functionality with them. I like how I love the swords. The sword icon on top really helps you keep everything straight as they're laying face up on the board, whereas these little markers here, I don't know, they just kind of got lost in a lot of the color. But the victory point total is shown in actual victory point tokens. I like that. I like how the font is larger, easier to read. The differences in the rune cards, as you can see, these are the backs. I like the design of the older ones better than the newer ones. I like how both of the backs do have the white border on them instead of a black border. And when you flip them over, that black border is still not there. And I like that about it because it shows wear and tear a little bit more, a little bit less than if you have the dark border on the other side. With the artwork, I like the older artwork better. That's not to say that the new artwork isn't good in my opinion. I just like it better for one reason or another. The font on the newer cards is larger, easier to read, and that I do enjoy about it. But all in all, the fact that both sides are white bordered here, whereas one side is white bordered and the other one has a dark border to it, I don't really like that because this side of the card will show its wear and tear much more readily than the other side. So that's the difference between the two versions of Fire and Axe that are out there. One much more difficult to get a hold of than the other. But again, the game is still the same, still plays the same, it still has the same feel to it, still has the wild swingy luck that some people really don't enjoy, but on the level, they're same game across the board. With that being said though, I think better choices could have been made for the artwork for the board especially. It was just too dark, the colors are just too muted. If there were any way possible that I could use this board with these components, I would definitely do that, hands down, beyond the shadow of a doubt. Now, having said that, moving on to the components, I think the components in the new version far outweigh in coolness factor in the original version. Now, the models are superbly better than the originals. While these were still really, really good, I think these are better. I like having the 3 different kinds of sculpts. The ships have a little bit of a design flaw on it because they have a really thin mast and that'll snap off real easy if you're not careful. So be careful with the ships if you get the new version. If you have the old version, you'll notice that most of those pieces are just solid rock. They're plastic. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but they're not usually going to break unless you really try hard to do that, while as the ship's masts on this will break pretty easy if you're not careful. So the question is, if you already have this, do you need to get this? And the question, quite frankly, is answered with a very simple no. If you have the original version, there's no reason to get the reprint because they are, in essence, the exact same game with basically a component upgrade. Now, if you never were able to purchase Fire and Axe and you do enjoy the game, then this is a kind of a slam dunk. All in all, this is a wonderfully great reprint that IDW did for Fire and Axe. I don't like the board. I'm over that. As far as a reprint goes, this is about as good as you can get. It has good artwork. It has very good plastic miniatures to represent your troops on the board. It has well-designed fonts and artwork on the cards and on the board itself. So this is a very good reprint of, in my opinion, a very good game, and I think it does a lot of justice to its original predecessor. So with that being said, this has been a comparison video from yours truly, Sam Healey. We'll see you on the flip side.